Welcome, everyone, to the 6th annual breakfast for the Children's Advocacy Center of Franklin County in the North Quabbin. I'm Bill Benson, Board President, and I'd like to share with you a little feedback I received from two individuals who said the same thing to me, which I think is interesting. When I asked Linda Dunleavy and Natalie Blay if they were coming, their response was, quote, almost quote for quote, "I wouldn't miss it. Nothing like a good cry first thing in the morning." Well, I admit that we do try to move you, and those of you who have been here before, I think, will testify to the fact that we do move you. We move you with stories of sometimes heart-wrenching abuse of our most vulnerable citizens. But we also move you with stories of hope, with stories of healing, and stories of justice. We do make a difference. CACs do make a difference. So I'd like to welcome everyone here, and we have an agenda, and my job is to introduce a number of people who made this event possible. First, we should recognize the committee who put this event together. Our board member and vice president, Corrine Fitzgerald, Jeanette Robichaud from the North Quabbin, Sarah Rooney of Michelle Dwyer, Sue Dillon, Jeremy Duncan, the irrepressible Elizabeth Fisk. Yay! Small agency, very limited budget, and we survive with volunteer services, and you'll hear more about that later, but we also survive because we have a very active board, very supportive board. So let me recognize them. Corrine Fitzgerald, our vice president, I already mentioned. Jim Alexander is our treasurer. Jesse Cooley is our clerk. Heather Bialecki Canning. Linda Sukowski, who I mentioned, Jeanette Robichaud. And again, Elizabeth Fisk. Jeff Trant, Susan Fenton, Matt Raymond, Casey Morey, and Stacy Boren. Now, we also have honorary board members, people who we're very proud to be associated with and who have helped us tremendously. The one and only DA, Dave Sullivan, Registrar of Probate and founder of the Franklin County Opioid Task Force, John Merrigan, and our long-distance honorary member, John Robards. And thank you, John, for attending today. He's actually based in New York City. I said we're a small agency. We get very limited state funding, which I hope will change this year. But this is our major fundraiser. And these sponsors have been with us for a long time, and they're always good to us, and they really need to be recognized. Our presenting sponsor is Greenfield Savings Bank. Our champion sponsors, Albert Hearing Services, Athol Hospital, Bay State Franklin Medical Center, Current Electric, Fitzgerald Real Estate, Franklin First Credit Union, Freedom Credit Union, Greenfield Community College, Greenfield Cooperative Bank, they've been with us from day one, and a new sponsor, United Steelworkers Local 480. Shall I do everyone? Okay, now we have hero sponsors. This takes a while, but we have a lot of support. Community Support Options, The Den, Mid-Century Scandinavian Furniture, First Light Power, Franklin County Rotary, Gilmore and Farrell Insurance, Hometown Bank, Athol, Mark Ledwell, who's been with us from day one and is a real hero, Morgan Stanley Wealth Management, Northwestern Mutual Wealth Management Company, Jane and Bill Plumley, Raymond Financial, and Tully Family Practice. Now, we have community sponsors, AEIOU, Athol Savings Bank, the CAC for Hampshire County, Shia and Michael Collins, Dylan Chevrolet, the Greenfield Police Association, Jack's Cleaners, and ServiceNet. Okay, that's it. You can see there's a lot of sponsors on various levels, but again, we survive because of our sponsors and because of you who come here and donate so generously to us. We wouldn't survive otherwise. Now, I really have the honor of introducing our next speaker, who will provide us a blessing for today. Joe Beat is a deacon at Holy Trinity Church. He's the, if you've been around, you know who Joe Beat is, and you also know his partner, Marie Beat. They are great people. They have been very supportive of the CAC through their foundation, CAC and many other organizations who try to do good for the area. And it really is an honor for me. He's one of my heroes. He's been around a long time. You've known him on many different levels. And when his name came up, it was just, everyone was so excited to have him come here. So Joe, where are you? Joe Beat, deacon at Holy Trinity Church.
Thank you, Bill. Thank all of you for being here. It is such a privilege for Marie and I to be here, to be with you for such a wonderful, wonderful reason and cause, one that is near to our hearts. We've been blessed with 5 children, 15 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren. The value of children is absolutely without measure. They are the greatest gift that we can ever have. And so it's a privilege and an honor on behalf of them and all of you here to be here with you this morning. In my faith, I know that there's not a place that any one of us can be that we will be separated from our Lord and our Maker, the one who has brought us together today. We are his family, his sisters and his brothers, brought together out of respect and love for what we must do that we so wish never needed to be done. Let us pray. Dear Lord, the children of our communities are the greatest blessings in our midst. Each birth, each child is in our eyes a new miracle given to us from you. They are so pure, so unblemished, so to be loved and to be cared for. But we know from the reality of our lives, this is not the fate for some. In your presence today, we ask your blessing on those who have dedicated their lives to the service and compassionate care of abused and battered children. And while we ask for them strength and guidance in their work, we ask even more for your grace, mercy, love, and strength to heal those who are wounded, often for life. Guide us too, Lord, as we seek to bring justice to all those who are perpetrators of abuse, and to any who would hide and protect them for their own means and good. Justice and mercy is yours, Lord. Ours are but the weapons to be there to bring it about. We are your children to do your will. And finally, bless all here today in our efforts to make every child safe and to rid our world of abuse. Bless us, Lord, and we offer this to you in our Lord's name. Amen.
Thank you, Joe. Wonderful as expected. Very much appreciated. Our next speaker is another hero of mine, one of our great political leaders, District Attorney Dave Sullivan.
Good morning. If you need to feel good today, just look around, because you're the spirit and love of children in Franklin County and North Quabbin, because it really does take a community to protect and to cherish and to give safety to children. And I can't thank you enough for being here. You're a witness to this important work. There's a saying that came from the Talmud, that every child that you save is saving the world. And every day the work of Department of Children and Families, of the CAC staff, of teachers, social workers, everybody in this area you're saving a world. That one child, you're saving that world to that child. And it has ramifications so far that we don't even know what it does. But that ripple that gets created here and beyond really does make a difference in children's lives. So I just want to thank you all for supporting the efforts of the CAC and keeping this a community that cares about children and cares about the future of these children. And I know that they're making a difference. And I just want to take one moment just to acknowledge the folks that every day work for us. They're elected by the community, but they really care. And we're very, very fortunate to have these elected officials. I want to start with a former elected official who every day works so strongly for the folks of Franklin and North Quabbin and also Hampshire, Claire Higgins. Thank you, Claire. Our state representative, Paul Mark from Greenfield. Thank you, Paul. Actually from Peru. I'm sorry, Paul. He's from another country. Representative Natalie Blay from Sunderland. You've already heard about John Merrigan. Thank you again, John, for being here. The justice equation, it couldn't happen without great court workers and personnel and folks that really care. And we have a beautiful clerk of courts, the Superior Court, Sue Eman. Thank you. And we have a rookie state senator who when you see her work, you think she's been here 20 years. Really, it's been dynamic, has really hit the ground running and doing a beautiful job for our districts. And I just want to thank you, Senator Joe Comerford. Our Registrar of Deeds, Scott Cody. Thank you, Scott. And I can't say enough about the beautiful people in law enforcement that really are out there with Department of Children and Families and really are that first safety net to make sure kids get in a protective environment. And then as things go forward with some of these cases, that they're there to really support the children and also to secure justice. And that's Chief Robbie Haig and his Deputy Chief Mark Williams. Thank you. So if there's any other elected officials, stand up and be recognized. So that's good. The whole room can stand up. So thanks again. I wish you the best of mornings, and it's going to be a great program ahead. Thank you.
And I just thank you all so much for coming out today. It's heartwarming, and I'm already ready for the tissues. So thank you all for coming. It's our 6th annual breakfast, hard to believe. And I'd like to give special thanks to Sarah Rooney, who did this beautiful slideshow. Thank you, Sarah. I also want to mention that Catherine Sykes is a board member, and we overlooked her in that list. So Catherine, please stand up for a second. We're so happy to have Catherine. So the mission of the CAC is really to protect children, provide justice, and promote healing. We opened our doors in February 2016, and our long-range goal has always been to provide access to therapeutic services to the kids and their families. We want children to begin to heal from their trauma as soon as possible. With the continual faith you have had in us, and with your support in 2018, we're able to start offering therapeutic and preventive services. In 2018, the National Children's Alliance awarded the CAC a grant which we collaborated with North Quabbin Community Coalition. This was to provide the Talking About Touching program to the elementary school-age children in Athol. This safety program was offered in the elementary school to all the kids, and it addressed bike safety, car safety, and body safety. The children were educated about personal boundaries. They know that no one should touch their bodies, and if that happens, who they should tell. I think it was successful, as the number of children in Athol that came to the CAC in 2018 doubled from 2017. 12 families came from Athol in 2017 and 25 families in 2018. We also received a 2-year grant from Mass Office of Victim Assistance. That's allowed us to hire a full-time case manager, Samantha Stalines. Samantha started right in July 2018, as soon as we had the money. Samantha's role is to meet the children and their families when they come to be interviewed at the CAC. It's important for her to immediately start building a relationship with them and guide them through the process, which is sometimes a very lengthy process. So having that relationship with one person really minimizes the trauma to the kids, and it supports the intervention that we're all trying to do. So it begins really at that first impact, at that first contact. And it's important to have one consistent person with the family the whole time. So that is Sam. She sits with the child while the parent is being interviewed or speaking to the investigators, the team of investigators, and then she sits with the parent while the child's being interviewed. So this allows Sam to start developing a relationship with the family and the child. Because what we want to do is we want to ensure that they receive the services that we think they need, and they want. So it really begins that journey of healing. Samantha has the luxury to be available to the family endless time so that there's no closure point to the case. Also with this grant, the CAC was able to develop a linkage agreement with clinical support options and Jackie Humphreys, a private clinician. These agreements ensure that the kids can start therapy without being on a waiting list. The Hampshire Children's Advocacy Center, my sister partner, received funding from the Massachusetts Children's Alliance for a coordinator of commercially sexually exploited children, often known as, we refer to it as CSEC. Stacy Langneck was hired for this position in October 2018. Stacy, you're somewhere, if you want to wave back there. This was a shared position with the Hampshire CAC and our CAC, so Stacy has split her time between the two offices. Sexual exploitation is when any child exchanges a sexual act for something of value. And although we don't want to think this occurs in our community, it does. Since October 2018, there have been 10 cases identified in the Franklin County, North Quabbin area. The good news is for the community is that as of July 1st, we expect to receive funding from Massachusetts Children's Alliance to hire a 30-hour-a-week CSEC coordinator just for the Franklin County, North Quabbin CAC. To further address this issue, the plan has been to have parenting workshops in the fall regarding sexual exploitation, because we find that a lot of professionals are trained, but that parents lack information, so they really need the information that all the professionals have. And the workshops are being funded by the Channing Beat Foundation. So thank you, Joe and Marie. Our second long-range goal has been to become accredited by the National Children's Alliance. You have 5 years from the time you become an associate member, and we've taken all 5 years. So to become accredited, you have to meet these 10 national standards. One of the standards is a cultural competency and diversity standard, which requires the CAC to conduct a community assessment to identify client demographics and develop strategies for outreach to underserved communities and clients. So the CAC, with the help really of Jeff Trant, who pretty much did it single-handedly, we've completed the community assessment, and it is on our website if anybody would like to review it. And at this point, we're working on the application and expect to have it in by July 15th. Guess what the cutoff date is? July 15th. So throughout the year, we continue to hold community events because we feel it's really important for people to know who we are and what we do. So in September, we had a road race called Race to Prevent Child Abuse, and there were 250 participants. What really made it successful in our mind was that a lot of children and families that had used the services at CAC actually felt comfortable enough to come back and run. So we thought that was great. In May, we had our first golf tournament, thanks to Sue Dillon. and Ryan Martin. It was called Chipping Away at Child Abuse. 124 people golfed, many who were not aware about child abuse or the services we offered, so it's just an excellent opportunity to educate them. Our last grant we received in 2018 was from the Greenfield Garden Club to create a healing garden, and Samantha is working on that with the kids, and we'll have it finished by the end of the summer. So although we had goals to expand services, we continue to provide a safe, child-friendly space for children that are about to disclose a story they've never told anyone. I want to share with you who those brave children were that came to the CAC in 2018. So in 2018, 103 children were interviewed at the CAC, 39 boys and 64 girls. Every year we have more than the national average, which is 1 in 6. We tend to have 1 in 4 boys. Why that is, I've still not figured out, but every year it's the same. The ages of the kids are under 6, 30 children, 7 to 12, 42 children, 13 to 18, 31 children. And the children were from the following towns: Greenfield, 13, Orange, 13, Athol, 25, Wendell, 2, South Deerfield, 4, Charlemont, 4, Conway, 2, Montague, 15, Shelburne Falls, 2, Coleraine, 2, Ashfield, 3, Heath, 1, Gill, 4, Sunderland, 1, New Salem, 4, Northfield, 1, Deerfield, 1. Last year when I read the names of the towns, we had 15 towns. This year we have 17 towns that we've served, but we still cover 31 towns, so we have work to do. Before I end, I want to really acknowledge the Rotary of Franklin County. Back where the drinks are, you see these 3 little bags that have toys and activities and snacks in them. Those are called care bags, and every year the Rotary of Franklin County create about 100 of these bags, and they give them to the CAC. There's 2 types, one for small children and one for teenagers. In each bag there's activities, there's snacks, and there's a comforting stuffed animal. They're given out to the children as they leave the CAC after being interviewed in hopes that it'll provide a little comfort for the ride home. I'm going to close with having Samantha share a story of how important these care bags are to the children. Although the bag seems like a small gesture, never underestimate what a small gesture can mean to a child that has been traumatized. Sam?
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Samantha Stalins, and I'm the case manager. And I will tell you that, as you've heard, the CAC model works. It's really beautiful. My job is really special, and I feel very grateful to be a part of this crowd and a part of the team every day. So I would like to share one quick story with you about the bags. Please take a look at them. So we had a young lady in. She had been sexually assaulted by a peer. She came and she shared her story. She did a wonderful job, and she left with a comfort bag, or care bag. And in that bag was a pink monkey, a little stuffed pink monkey. Most of us would think, oh, whatever, it's a little stuffed animal, it's not going to do much. To this child, it was a huge deal. Several weeks after, I had ongoing conversations with her mother. She reported that the child had a weight lifted from her shoulders. She was doing much better. She was sleeping through the night. She was eating. She was functioning better. And she was sleeping with this pink monkey every night. This pink monkey also went to therapy appointments with her, to medical appointments, anything that was a little bit scary, a little bit uncertain. This pink monkey traveled with her, and I understand that this pink monkey is still traveling with this little girl. So thank you to the Rotary Club. That's just one story. If you want to hear more, I got some more. So find me. But we are very grateful for the comfort bags, the care bags. The children love them. The families love them. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you to the Rotary Club, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Sam. And by the way, I didn't introduce Irene, so I kind of ran out of superlatives this morning, but I got more coming too. We wouldn't be what we are without Irene. She's supposedly a part-time employee, and she seems like a nice, calm, reasonable presence, but she is a dynamo, and she gets. Watch out for the quiet ones. Yes, well, she gets things done, which is important to all of us. Now, I have the real honor of presenting the Community Star Award to two people, you've seen their photos up there. I call them the dynamic duo, Michelle Dwyer and Sue Dillon. You know, I said we succeed because we have a great board, but we succeed because we have great volunteers. And these are two women who do not want to be on the board, but they're there for everything we do, and they're there in spades. Michelle, as I mentioned, is president of Franklin First Credit Union and recruits some of her staff to work with her on every major event we have. Sue Dillon is the type of person you don't say no to. And I think there's a guy named Tom here who can attest to that. Yes, he's right there. Am I right? Okay. And so it's really, it's such a great thing to be part of an organization where you just meet people and work with people you've known for the first time. It's just been very rewarding for all of us. So we very, very much appreciate all the work you two have done. Sue said she wouldn't cry, but I don't think that's real. But these are two women that I'm very, very happy to work with, be associated with, and very proud to say they're my friends. So please come up, Sue Dillon and Michelle Dwyer. Look at them. Sue Dillon, here's your award. Thank you so much for everything you've done for us. Would you like to say a few words?
To receive this award was an unexpected honor. I'm amazed at the work the Children's Advocacy does on behalf of the most vulnerable in our community. Because of their commitment, more children receive the care they need, and an important step is taken in the service of justice. I'm incredibly honored to support them. Thank you for this honor.
Trust me, the honor is all ours. Again, thank you. Michelle Dwyer. It's like I have new sisters here. Hi, how you doing?
Good, how are you? I just want to say thank you for Irene and Bill and all the staff of the CAC and the board of the CAC, but also a big thank you to my staff and my board that allowed me to kind of take this time out to focus on things that are important to me. So thank you very much.
I do want to say that my committee is very diligent about making sure I spend no money, that any money raised goes to the CAC. So I want to, the award that is given to the Champion of Kids is a beautiful Josh Simpson planet, which is purchased by Sue Dillon and is given to us to give out. We also have an award for a Champion of Justice this year, and that award was purchased by Michelle Dwyer and Franklin First. So our Champion of Kids this year has been an investigator of child abuse for the Department of Children and Families for 22 years, which means she has done over 3,000 investigations, primarily in Franklin County and the North Quabbin area. Investigators for the Department of Children and Families have a job that is really comparable to the police, the level of danger. They knock on doors and don't know what's occurring behind the door. They enter homes with drug involvement, mental health issues, dangerous animals, guns, but they have no protection. The DCF investigators are not always seen as a social worker that has come to help the family because they have the authority to take custody of the children. All these contributing factors makes every day challenging for a Department of Children and Families investigator. This Champion of Kids has worked with children that have been physically assaulted, children that have had burns inflicted, children that have been severely neglected, children that have been close to starvation, children that have been sexually assaulted by someone they knew, and children that have died. Yet our Champion of Kids has a warm smile, a generous heart, and is very tenacious in determining if a child has ever been abused. She is fair, she is a good listener, and has entered every family's home respectfully, regardless of the danger the home might present. Although she has seen the most difficult child abuse cases, she has an eternal positive outlook that brings hope to children, families, co-workers, and just everyone she meets. I had the privilege to be her supervisor for several years when I worked for the Department of Children and Families. She was someone I never worried about her judgment. When she was investigating a case, she didn't stop until she had all the information she needed, always putting the child ahead of herself. This meant sometimes she worked overtime. I only laugh because I'm recalling memories. But it would be late at night, 11 o'clock, midnight, and I'd think, where is she? What is she doing? But she'd be at a police station interviewing an alleged perpetrator, at a hospital in Worcester with a child, maybe driving a child to a foster home in another whole different area. But she was where she needed to be. She was making sure she had all the information she needed to keep that child safe. But she did not stop at child protection. She also protected animals. It is known that animal abuse is an indicator of child abuse in a home. On one investigation, she not only removed a child from an abusive, dangerous situation, but she also took the dog. She brought the child and the dog back to the office. Well, the office was not prepared to have the dog. And some wondered if she couldn't be charged with stealing the dog, actually. Since there was no precedent for keeping animals safe, she made one. She established a working relationship with MSPCA so that social workers could file reports with the MSPCA without violating confidentiality. It's my pleasure today to honor someone who truly is a champion of kids, Brenda Moziers.
So I have to say, in coming here this morning, it's so nice to see many people here that I consider my family. Not only my family from birth, but my family through this job that we've become so close. It touches my heart to see everybody here on behalf of the safety of children, and it makes me a little emotional. So thank you guys for being here and supporting the CAC. I have worked for the Department of Children and Families for the past 24 years, 22 of those as an investigator. When I first started working for the department, I had no idea what I was in for. I was like 25 years old. I had not worked with children in this capacity before, and I can say that I have learned so many things from the clients we work with, especially the children. I found that working with children is something that has changed my life. The children we work with are resilient and brave, and I realize that the children in our communities are all of our responsibility. The children are our future, and we owe it to be there for them, to listen to them, to protect them, and to do what's in their best interest always. In my role as an investigator, children have trusted me enough to share the worst things that have happened to them, done by the people they trust and love the most. When something like this happens, oftentimes it creates a bond between a social worker and a child that can last for years to come. I can say that I love my job. Most of you who know me know that I say that a lot. And I've had the honor to be able to follow children from the time of the investigation through their ongoing case and into their adulthood to see their successes, failures, and of them becoming healthy to have their own children and lives. I've also been witness to the children who have not been able to overcome their trauma from being abused as children and have succumbed to substance abuse and suicide, which makes my passion for this job that much stronger. The truth is that child abuse can start at child's birth and continue through the rest of their lives. Child abuse occurs in all races, religions, and socioeconomic statuses. Our job is to protect children and seek justice for those who perpetrate crimes against children and animals. No one can do this job alone, and I'm so thankful to have had the opportunity to work alongside the local and state police, the DA's office, and the court system collaboratively in order to make sure that children are protected. Many of the people in this room have become like family to me over the years due to the hours and years we have spent together investigating allegations of child abuse and neglect together. This type of work creates a bond with coworkers like no other. I'm also thankful to therapists, pediatricians, and school guidance counselors for reporting abuse and neglect and working closely with us to ensure that a child is protected. We are part of the village that raises our children to ensure they are protected from abuse and neglect. We, as a community, have to ensure that people can have difficult conversations and report child abuse when they see or hear about it. Reporting abuse can be trying when it is a family member or a friend, but children are our priority and they have the right to grow up in a safe environment. At a time like this, with the growth of technology, to include the internet, things are occurring like we have never seen before. Crimes against children are exploding, and we have to be more cognizant of not only our own children, but also of the children in our communities and neighborhoods. Children can be bought and sold online from the comfort of a person's living room, office, or on their phone at the grocery store. As technology tends to isolate us more as individuals, creating a higher risk for children to be abused. I have to say that my family at DCF, to include investigation units A, B, and C, the screening unit, and supervisors have been essential in teaching me everything they bring to the job to help me be a more well-rounded investigator and teach me new ways of thinking about things. I could not have done this job without my longtime partners, and friends, to include Clara Villarengo, Dawn Jenner, Dwayne Griffin, Ray Alkus, Stevie Arango, Dale Worrell, and others. I'm so thankful to Suzanne Koch, forensic interviewer from the DA's office, who has mentored me in her amazing interview skills with children and has taught me a lot about interviewing children out in the field. I believe this is the hardest yet most rewarding work anyone can do, and I share this award with you as it cannot be done alone. I want to thank my family, especially my husband Joe, as they support me in the work we do by always being understanding when I am not able to attend a family obligation, social function, or I'm working late because of an investigation I'm working on. The job we do oftentimes exceeds the hours of 8:45 and 5, and I thank my family for the support they extend to me. Lastly, I'd like to thank God for allowing the children to trust me enough to tell me about the worst things that have happened to them by the people they trust and love the most. Thank you, and I share this award with all of you because nobody can do this job alone. Thank you, guys.
Congratulations, Brenda. It's always been an honor to work with you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kelly Bollier. I'm the coordinator for the Child Abuse Unit at the Northwestern District Attorney's Office. I'm here today to introduce to you our Hero of Justice Award recipient, Dr. Jeremy Adlin. IB had been deaf since birth and became legally blind at age 3. He communicated only by sign language and was diagnosed as being autistic and as having attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. IB had an awful lot going against him, but fortunately, by all accounts, he wasn't aware of that and was a happy-go-lucky, mischievous young boy. By the time that IB was 10 years old, his mother's boyfriend, the defendant, had been living with IB and his mom for a couple of years. As IB's paid caregiver, the defendant assumed an ever-increasing role in IB's care. Unfortunately, during this same time, the defendant began selling and using heroin. During the evening of July 7, 2013, IB became extremely sick and began vomiting uncontrollably. He eventually collapsed onto the bathroom floor. Instead of calling for help, the defendant put IB back to bed. On the morning of July 8th, IB was still extremely sick, yet the defendant still did not seek medical care for him. IB's mother, who only saw IB sleeping in the morning, left the house, telling the defendant that if IB got any sicker, he should call an ambulance. Approximately 3 hours later, while the defendant was in the middle of a drug deal, IB stumbled into the living room where the defendant was. He began signing that his stomach hurt, and then he collapsed, falling into a coma. Finally, almost 10 hours after IB had become horribly sick, the defendant called for an ambulance. IB was brought to a local hospital and eventually air-flighted to UMass Medical Center in Worcester. Despite IB being in his care for the previous 24 hours, the defendant initially told police and medical personnel that IB had not suffered any injuries. Later, the defendant stated that he now recalled IB had had a minor fall the day before at the playground. Upon arrival at UMass Medical Center, IB was rushed into surgery for suspected intestinal trauma. Dr. Jeremy Adlin, a pediatric trauma surgeon, performed the surgery. What Dr. Adlin found was that IB's small intestine was severed, an injury referred to as a complete jejunal transection. Despite heroic efforts, Dr. Adlin knew that due to the severity of the injuries and the obvious time that had passed between sustaining the injury and getting treatment, IB's injuries would be fatal. Had IB gotten prompt care, the injuries would have been survivable. Unfortunately, IB was pronounced dead 2 days later. As heroic as Dr. Adlin's efforts were to save IB, it was Dr. Adlin's voice on behalf of IB that makes him the true hero. Based on his training and experience, Dr. Adlin knew that the history provided by the defendant did not match with the injuries that IB had suffered. IB's injuries were the type a child might suffer in a high-speed car accident or from a fall from several stories, or as the victim of child abuse. In his quiet, unassuming way, Dr. Adlin fought and fought to make sure that everyone knew that IB had died from an inflicted blow to his abdomen and from the failure to get prompt medical care. In the 4 years of fighting for IB, Dr. Adlin never quieted his voice. He spent an extraordinary amount of time explaining and re-explaining the injuries and the timing of the injuries to DCF, to the police, and to the prosecutors. Dr. Adlin also explained and re-explained to everyone how IB's injuries could not have been caused from the alleged minor fall that the defendant claimed. Dr. Adlin patiently answered the numerous phone calls, emails, and endless medical questions from the multidisciplinary team. Eventually, Dr. Adlin testified before the grand jury and provided the medical evidence. Dr. Adlin's testimony was critical to the grand jury decision to indict the defendant. At this time, I'd just also like to take a moment to speak to the incredible investigative work that was done by Sergeant Gary Darling and other members of the Massachusetts State Police, to Lieutenant Ron Cody and others from Athol Police, and the numerous DCF investigators and social workers that were involved in this case, all of whom also testified before the grand jury and fought for justice for this child. This was truly multidisciplinary teamwork at its best. Following the indictment, our case faced its biggest hurdle when the medical examiner assigned to the case was prepared to declare IB's injuries an unfortunate accident based on IB's alleged minor fall. Once again, we turned to Dr. Adlin, and once again, he answered the call. As a pediatric trauma surgeon, Dr. Adlin was extremely experienced with the type of injury that IB had suffered. The medical examiner was not. Dr. Adlin actually took time from his extremely busy practice and volunteered to accompany the prosecution team to Boston to meet with the medical examiner and argue our case. It took time and a lot of arguing, but eventually Dr. Adlin prevailed in convincing the medical examiner not to rule IB's death an accident. Although it could not be proven who actually dealt IB the fatal blow, with Dr. Adlin's help, we could prove who it was that failed to get IB the medical attention he desperately needed until it was too late. As the defendant pleaded guilty to the involuntary manslaughter of IB and was sentenced to numerous years in state prison, Dr. Adlin was there to watch the justice he had fought so hard for to be delivered. Because of Dr. Adlin's unwavering dedication to seeking justice for IB, a 10-year-old boy who didn't have a voice, he is our 2019 Hero of Justice.
Thank you. Wow, thank you. I got this invitation some time ago and really didn't understand the magnitude of this. I think this is a testament to your community. Really, you should congratulate yourselves. I am a pediatric surgeon, a pediatric trauma surgeon in unfortunate circumstances, and most days I love my job. When I met IB, that was not a day that I loved. I love my job because my patients do well. They're kids. They come in with appendicitis, they come in with a hernia, they come in with some other issue, and they generally do well. And then we have those that are involved in trauma and those that are involved in non-accidental trauma, as we suspected this patient, IB, was, and those are the toughest days. And we fought and we did the right thing. We cared. I say we because I'm part of a team. I'm part of this team, but I'm part of a team at UMass, and this trauma team did the right thing for the patient. We got him to the operating room, got him to the intensive care unit, and we couldn't save this life. And so there's some irony in standing up here receiving an award for the patient that we couldn't save, but there's the justice in this. He doesn't have a voice, and we said that we would give him that voice, and that's our job. And I've been thanked a few times during this whole process for kind of going above and beyond, but I don't think it's above and beyond. I think it's part of the job description, right, for everybody here. You know, I'm receiving an award with a patient that, unfortunately, a child didn't make it from non-accidental trauma. And going back to the story, you know, when the patient was deceased, the medical examiner accepted the case, and I met with authorities from Franklin County and the police department here and the detectives, and they've been fantastic, and they said, we'll be talking to you in the future. What do you think happened? I said, here's what I think happened. I think this was abuse. I've seen this before. This doesn't happen from a minor fall. And they said, all right, you'll be hearing from us. And they said, we gave the case to the medical examiner, and the medical examiner thinks it might have been an accident. And the email said, you know, we respectfully disagree, but I think there were other expletives, you know, no effing way, I think was what happened. And they said, all right, well, we're going to have to talk. And we went to Boston to meet with the ME, and I had an invitation to speak to the grand jury out here, and that was a fantastic experience for me, and I think for them. And really, the case started to turn right there in the DA's office, the dogged work out here. I mean, again, think about it. We're talking about justice being brought 4 or 5 years later on a patient, but I'm receiving an award, but this patient, there's no justice if the first responders don't get this patient to the local medical center quickly. There's no justice if the patient doesn't get life-flighted to UMass. There's no justice if the DA's office isn't hounding me. There's no justice if the CAC here is not. I learned today that Brenda, the recipient of the last award, knew our patients. You know, she worked with this patient with special needs, and you know, this is how tightly knit a community like this is, and how invested they are in their children's future, as they should be, as we should be. But there's no justice if the detectives don't continue to do their work. There's no justice to do their job. Could have fallen apart at any juncture. So I think that this is a tremendous honor. I think the honor really is for everyone involved, and I gladly accept it on behalf of all of you. But the reason for these awards is not to make me feel good about what I do, because I love my job, like Brenda loves her job, and we don't do it, and most of us, I think, in this room don't do it for awards. The awards exist so the breakfast can exist, so you guys can all get in a room together, say hello, and then support the Children's Advocacy Center. Yeah. All right, thank you very much.
So I am here to introduce our keynote speaker, Sue. So I'd like to give you a little bit of background in that case. RG first met the defendant when she was about 8 years old and he was about 22. At that time, the defendant was dating RG's older sister. Eventually, the defendant and RG's older sister ended up living together. At that time, the sister was 18 and the defendant was 25. The defendant always paid special attention to RG, was very affectionate with her, and always stood up for her if there was a disagreement with her sister. By the time RG was 12 years old, the defendant was fully grooming her. He would text her every morning saying, "Good morning, sunshine," and he would text her a good night most nights. He would text her several times during the day, always telling her that she could come talk to him about anything. He would discuss with her friends, school projects, and always offered his advice. Over time, the text started to change and had more sexual references. The defendant started asking the victim if she was having sex with a boy she was interested in, and if so, wanted her to tell him the details. The texts were laden with sexual overtones, all in the name of wanting to help RG and make sure she didn't make any relationship mistakes. RG, who adored her older sister, spent as many weekends as she could at her sister's house, which of course was the defendant's house. The defendant was always very encouraging of these weekend visits. Then the time came that RG's mother needed to be hospitalized for one of her many surgeries. While her mother was in the hospital, RG was to stay with her sister and the defendant. The night before the surgery, RG spent the night at her sister's home. In the early morning, RG's sister drove their mother to the hospital while RG slept in the spare room, and the defendant slept in the room that he shared with her sister. This was just the scenario that the defendant must have been waiting for, because that morning, the defendant sexually assaulted RG while her sister was at the hospital with their mother. RG disclosed her abuse in the manner that most teenagers do. She told a friend, who was also a classmate. That friend then told an adult, who in turn reached out to RG's mother. Upon hearing of the abuse, a devastated mom reached out to her best friend and RG's grandmother, Susan Chesborough, today's speaker. RG's mother asked Susan to pick up RG at school and bring her home. On the ride home, RG broke down and told Susan about the abuse. The adults then notified the police. In the very long process leading up to and throughout the trial, Susan and RG's mother were always there by RG's side. Susan accompanied the family when RG was first interviewed. Susan was there at every court date, at every motion hearing, and at every trial prep meeting with RG. Susan was also sitting by RG's mom's side when the jury came back with guilty verdicts, which landed the defendant in state prison for 10 years. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to give you RG's grandmother and the family's rock, Susan Chesborough.
All right, just to clear it up, I'm her godmother, not her grandmother. Good morning, my name is Sue Chesborough, and I am Riley's godmother. Thank you for having me. We were introduced to the Children's Advocacy Center because of some unfortunate events that no family ever wants to have unfold in their lives, and that no child should ever have to endure. I can honestly say that RG, her mother, and myself don't know where we would have been or what we would have done without the support we received from the very beginning of what turned out to be a very long process. When RG's case started, we were told to come to the DA's office in Greenfield, and that is where Deborah, Linda, and Detective Cody took us by the hand, helped us through every step of the process. For what could have been a very intimidating atmosphere in the DA's office, they made us comfortable in the environment they had to work with at the time. I can only imagine that for RG, being just 13 years old, the environment may not have been as comforting as the newly introduced home-like one that they have since implemented. I feel that for any child in this situation, anything that can be done to help them feel as comfortable as possible is so very important. The process was long and daunting, and no one can truly prepare you for what you're about to go through in this process. The emotion, the pain, the sadness, the anger, and the fear about how things will turn out is like nothing you could imagine unless you or a loved one have experienced it. Although I'm not RG's mother, my love for this child, whom I watched be brought into this world, is just as strong as the love I have for my very own. She holds a special place in my heart, and watching her go through this was painful, but she made me so proud. From the beginning, from being the first in the family to hear that this really happened by her own sister's boyfriend, basically a member of the family, was sickening and gut-wrenching. However, I watched her strength as she showed up for each and every meeting with the Children's Advocacy team, sharing every detail of her painful story over and over again for 3 years. As an adult, I cannot imagine going through something like this, but then to have to share it with strangers, I can't imagine how difficult that would be. But she did it, and she did it consistently, never wavering from her truth, from the age of 13 until the case concluded at 16 years of age. With the help of the team who became such an invaluable part of our lives, she got her justice. Although justice was served and he is serving his jail time, we all continue to deal with this circumstance in our own ways. The reality is it never truly goes away. But knowing there are children out there going through similar circumstances right now is why I'm here today speaking to you all. Anything that I can do to help raise money for a cause that will help children in one of the most trying times of their lives To have the support that we had in an environment that is welcoming and comforting is why I am here. These children's lives are altered at no fault of their own. It is the least we can do to support them, to help them to hopefully get the outcome we were fortunate to get in our case. When I told my husband, Jake, that I was going to be speaking, he was so proud because not only is this way out of my comfort zone, but he knows how important this cause is as well. Although he wasn't able to attend all of the court hearings and the meetings, he knows how invaluable this service was for us as we went through the process. So on behalf of his union, he's the president of the United Steelworkers Local 880, I'm honored to present $1,030 towards this cause. Thank you, Jake, for your generous donation. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate all of your support for this cause. It's very near and dear to my heart. Thank you.
The theme of the breakfast is hope and healing, and we hear so many tough stories today, but the common theme is that there's a triumph in the end. There's a triumph over adversity and some of the worst elements in our society. And it's important, the work that's done here, that we are all pulling in together to help fund that. And so I'm pleased to report at the state level that on the House side, and I've had the honor of being the lead on this, the champion for the last couple of years, the House and Senate, we've secured $900,000 for the Children's Advocacy Centers throughout the state. And in the more local, our own new senator, Senator Comerford, was able to successfully get $60,000 for this individual CAC in the budget. And we've all been working together as a team to make sure that that gets through conference committee and signed into law by the governor, because another theme of today is teamwork. Thank you for being here. Thank you.
Now the highlight of today, this is the internationally known Federal Street School Children's Choir. They've been singing at our breakfast for the last 4 or 5 years. It's overseen by Gina Clark. Did I get your name right? I screwed it up the last time. But they are terrific, and we like to close our breakfast with some good songs from these great kids. This is our future right here. Okay.